Welcome back. China is now denying a report that it is using facilities in Cuba to spy on the United States since at least March, according to the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Beijing denying that. Last year, a Chinese spy balloon flew across the entire U.S., and Biden officials denied it posed any threat before admitting that, in fact, the balloon did come from China and that it did, in fact, was used to spy on Americans. This coming as Biden administration officials keep denying the reports that drones are flying over New York and New Jersey pose a threat. They're not giving any answers on the origins of these drones. Joining me now is Hudson Institute Senior Fellow, Atlas Organization founder, and the author of The Decisive Decade, Jonathan D.T. Ward. Jonathan, welcome back. Your thoughts, do you think these, look, I know you have no idea what these drones are. We have no idea either. We're not getting any information from the Pentagon. But how likely is it, in your view, that this is the kind of work that you would expect from communist China?
Hi, Maria. Well, look, yeah, so the drones, I think, given the lack of any real information yet, I'm certainly not privy to anything that explains what they are, what the origins are. At this point, senators have sent letters to the FBI and the FAA and DHS, and everybody seems to be looking for answers from a township level to a national level. So I guess we'll find out about that. But I think what is important here is to realize that the homeland security threats from the People's Republic of China are real and they're adding up. So leaving aside the story of the drones, what we've seen with Salt Typhoon, which gets into all of our telecommunications networks, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, everything, and then earlier Volt Typhoon, which targets our critical infrastructure, statements from the director of the FBI at various times saying China's preparing to wreak havoc, create panic, reduce our will to respond, and the fact that you've got the challenges in the Pacific where, even this week you have an unprecedented number of ships and planes going throughout the Taiwan Straits and really throughout the entire First Island chain. So in the event that Beijing initiates conflict in the Pacific, it won't take place. I think it's becoming very obvious that won't simply take place overseas. It will take place here at home. They are preparing themselves to attack this homeland. So with or without speculation on the drones, I think we have to begin to incorporate a homeland security strategy into a national strategy towards China. And remember that this is an absolutely, viciously hostile adversary state. The denials over their Cuban SIGINT facilities, which I think at this point the CSIS report showed demonstrable SIGINT instrumentation at multiple sites. This is the real Cold War. We're in it. We've got to get real.
We've been talking about the agenda to come, Jonathan, for the last several weeks. And, of course, we've been reporting that there will be two reconciliation packages, one to deal with the border and energy, and then a second one to deal with the extension of taxes. We're going to get details on that continuing resolution going into 2025, probably by this weekend, I think. We're going to get it by Sunday night. This is the last vehicle. This NDAA and this December 20th deadline, this is the last vehicle this year for any tough China-related bills. Okay, we saw many of the bills in terms of the drone activity absent from the write-up. I want to get your take on what's most important to include in this last effort, this last vehicle to have tough China bills. What should be in there?
Look, you've got to hit them where it hurts, which is the economy. That's what counts. That's where China's weaknesses exist. It's where its vulnerabilities exist. The entirety of their grand strategy is expressed in their underlying economic strategies, the 5-year plans, Made in China 2025, Belt and Road, and the entire, very vast array of corporates and banks that are owned by the Communist Party of China. So we have this giant target set. And I think the more that we're going after that, get rid of PNTR, get them off our exchanges, get them out of our, investment vehicles at a federal and state level, and then start targeting the corporations. And I'd start taking their banks offline, given what they're doing in fentanyl. We have to respond to them in other areas of this contest. It can't just be one for one. If they're, they're funding fentanyl precursors, we should start looking at their banking system. Their banks are in Russia. Their companies are in Russia, supporting Putin's invasion. They're supporting Iran and its own, atrocities in the Middle East. So, we have this very broad spectrum to go after, but I think it mostly comes down to shaping the economic battlefield, getting ourselves back into a position of strength in that regard, and really being relentless on what we can target with regard to this regime.
Yeah, I mean, if these China-related measures are not attached to this weekend's CR details, they could form a bipartisan China bill in the first 100 days. So we'll see about that. You know that President Trump invited Xi Jinping to the inauguration. We understand that the Chinese president will not attend. Reports from CBS that he will not attend President Trump's inauguration next month. China's ambassador to the United States is expected to be there, along with other possible Beijing officials. It comes as the White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby had this to say about U.S.-China relations under the Biden administration. Watch this.
It's going to be up to President-elect Trump to decide who's going to sit with him there at the inauguration, who's going to be there. We've worked really hard on this most consequential of bilateral relationships. The president met with Xi Jinping a number of times, including recently, and as you know, at APEC. And we believe that as we get ready to turn over things to the Trump team, that we're turning over a U.S.-China relationship that is in better shape than the one we found it in. That doesn't mean that we don't have disagreements. We do, and we will, and I'm sure they will too. But we're working hard on this relationship, and we'll do that right to the end.
Well, I mean, they're working hard on this relationship, Jonathan. What does that mean, that they kept sending all of these cabinet members to kiss the ring of Xi Jinping? What does it mean that they're not responding to any of the bad behavior of communist China? What does that comment mean, really? I mean, look, there's fentanyl flowing into the United States, killing American citizens. They had a COVID cover-up, and they cornered the market in PPE. They've been stealing intellectual property for decades. You've got companies trading on U.S. exchanges here that don't even follow the rules of our accounting standards. So what specifically do you think he's referring to in terms of handing over this great relationship?
Yeah, and he called it disagreements. I mean, this isn't about disagreements. This is about a hostile nation state that is preparing for war with America, that is, essentially subsidized the death of more Americans than have died in the Second World War. Disagreements is not what this is about. The invitation of Xi Jinping to the inauguration, has certainly puzzled people that study U.S.-China issues. What we're missing is clear American leadership on the most important, real geopolitical and national security issue of our lifetimes.
You're right.
That's what we need. That's what we need. The Bidens didn't do it. That's what this administration has to do. And we're in this moment where we have to lead on this. And in every serious issue that faced this nation in our past, Lincoln in the Civil War, FDR in the Second World War, Reagan winning the Cold War, we had clear, unambiguous American leadership direct to the American people, explaining the stakes of what we're doing, what we're dealing with. And you have many people in this country that can explain this very clearly now, and we need that at the highest level so that we can take this on, so we know where we're going without mixed signals, without entertaining our enemies, our adversary dictators. We need to get real about this, get clear about it, and bring the American people into a position where we can handle it, which we still can.
And wouldn't now be the appropriate time? Wouldn't now be the appropriate time while China is somewhat weak economically, right? I mean, China's economy is struggling even without President-elect Trump's trade tariffs. Beijing promising a fiscal stimulus plan to counter the tariffs. It looks like it's all smoke and mirrors. No specific details on the plan coming from China's economic conference this week, pushing China's 10-year bond to fall below 1.8% for the first time in history. Jonathan, what do you want to say about the Chinese economy today?
Well, look, they do have weaknesses. We've seen a lot of that at the macro level in the housing crisis. The fact that there's slowing growth, lacking consumption, that's not really working out for them. Deflationary spirals, these sorts of things. But what they've also done is built the world's largest industrial base. They've essentially come to dominate industry after industry across the entire picture of what counts in the 21st century. For example, they can outbuild us 200 to 1 in shipbuilding. They, really are going pretty hard on their outbound trade. Signing plenty of deals. They've essentially locked up the prime position in the world's global goods trade. So there's a lot that they have established now, which is why you're going to need initiatives that are able to push them back, to roll them back, to create pressure at home, and to use that to undermine their international economic position that creates their strategic power. So it's not going to happen on their own. I mean, we have to be the ones that apply the pressure. The U.S. can still do that, but if we don't do it in the 2020s, we won't have a second shot. That's why this is the decisive decade. We do it now.
Exactly. And that's what you wrote all about in The Decisive Decade. Jonathan, great to see you. Thanks so much. Jonathan Ward on Communist China.